Welcome back to our second episode of From the Weeds to the Clouds with the two Michaels, Michael Krefman and Michael Peterson. We're happy to be back on, and we plan to do this on a regular cadence, and we'll look to have some amazing guests on here. There's so many people with such great experience in the industry and have some really valuable perspectives that Michael and I really appreciate when we are able to interact and engage with some whether it's from a bud tender up to an investor or an owner or celebrities. We really learn a lot when we have those interactions, and we're hoping to share those a little bit more publicly. So, anybody else who's joining in on this can kind of learn what we talk about and some of the things that can move the industry forward. So for this one, we're going to call this episode High Vibes and Field Guides. I think Michael Peterson, I believe you just got back from Electric Forest was last weekend?
Yeah, so I think that we can get a more even cadence of when we're doing these podcasts when we don't have so much crazy stuff going on, but life is always crazy, right? So I just got back from Electric Forest. It was my first time ever going to a big festival like that. And it was, I don't want to exaggerate, but it really was life-changing and just kind of opened my eyes to a different world and just really got me thinking about festivals and how that relates to cannabis, the intersect and just how people are always having a good time, right?
I've always thought about music, art, um, fashion, design, all the creative spaces really have a large intersection with cannabis, and that's kind of what's special to me about when we say weed culture. I think there's a lot of that creativity that comes into play. Any festival I've ever, since I was probably my first concert I went to when I was maybe 12 years old, a Warren G show. There's always been weed at most concerts, festivals,
Yep.
regardless of genre. Maybe if you were to have gone to a Britney Spears concert in 1999, maybe there wouldn't have been as much weed, but
I don't
most of the
know.
show, yeah. Hey, you know what? I don't know either. I can tell you that at Justin Bieber, there was some weed, but it wasn't as extreme as, say, if I were to go to a Wiz Khalifa show.
Yes.
And I think some of those cultural vibes are shifting actually as well for indoor. A lot of people are having a little bit more respect for the indoor now that we can smoke and consume legally. There's still a level of respect sometimes for concert goers, festival goers that are not consumers,
You're
because
right.
it can be an offensive product to some people. And I think that we need to appreciate not just those that are like us, but that not everybody is like us. And we still have to treat everybody with respect. And we share that space at these concerts. So that's an interesting note. But I know this one was a complete outdoor festival. I mean, it sounds incredible. I'd love to go. I had thought about making it this year and I just wasn't able to. But I think it's one of the more well-renowned festivals, and that's out in Rothbury, Michigan. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So went out on Wednesday night, camped the whole weekend, Thursday through Sunday, and it's just a lot. But like, I just want to go back to what you're saying there, where you're totally right. There's all these different types of people getting together, and it's all about just love and respect. And that's just really the takeaway that I have from the weekend, as far as just we're all a collective group together, and we can all collectively improve and lift each other up.
I love that, love and respect. I always say, shine light and love in the world, and be a part of a community. That's your local community, your local block, maybe whatever other organizations you're a part of, if you've got kids or if you're religious, whatever those may be. But this cannabis community has always been so welcoming to everybody, non-discriminatory. And it's just a lot of love and positivity. And that's, what's drawn me to the product, the plant, and this industry and the people. It's the plant and people, and that's pretty magical. So when you combine that with an experience like what you had
Yeah.
out in nature and with music and electronics, like that's pretty immersive and enhancing set and setting, in addition to maybe just consuming. If you're a daily consumer, or however you normally consume it, it's a really special opportunity. And you just want to dive into that a little bit and hear a little bit more from Michael Peterson's perspective around What was that like for those of us who have never been, or for those of us that do go? How was this similar or different to maybe other festivals or to previous years? And I know it was your first experience there. I'm not sure if you've attended other cannabis music festivals. I know I have for a long time, and some of them aren't licensed cannabis events, but man, weed and music kind of just weed and music.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, what do you really want to get into here? Is it kind of you want to talk about what kind of products were out there? I think I don't know. I don't believe that there were licensed retailers selling there. So, is it more of a traditional kind of Burning Man type barter economy that was out there? Did you bring your own product? Who'd you go with? Who was the best musical act you saw? Who had the best visual? I mean, let's get into it. Let's talk
Yeah.
about kind of your experience there.
So I think one thing that stood out to me is just going back when you were talking about the Britney Spears concert, talking about how maybe you didn't see as much smoke. Well, maybe there weren't as many edibles back then, but edibles is definitely a growing category. Drinks are definitely a growing category, right? So it was just interesting for me to see what people are consuming at these sort of events. And you're right, there were not on-site consumption places that you could buy things. So it's groups of people all bringing things in collectively to this one place. And it's not just groups from Michigan, right? It's groups from all over the country. So, Michigan, we are very blessed with a robust recreational market, right? People come from other places and they are just mind blown. 5 grams for $40 or whatever. Like they're used to spending that for 1 gram. It's just a total different world. And interacting with some of those people that don't have that same access that I do was really fascinating, and just hearing what they like compared to what I like. And um, I'm a kind of a higher end rosin smoker. Other people aren't, right? So at these festivals, you have people that may not care as much. They are just looking for that quick 1 day enjoyable time. And something like rosin in a hot environment or a really wet environment like that, it's just not as ideal, right? You're used to having a setup, a rig, all that kind of stuff. So you just can't really do that out when you're camping as much. I did see some guys with their Puffcos and
Hmm.
stuff like that. But as far as it goes, it really felt like it came down to pre-rolls. Pre-rolls was the number one thing.
So pre-rolls. So people, I'm an OG old head here, and when we would go to shows, there wasn't as much even dabs set up. Now a lot of times there's a whole dab bar at some of these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But it wasn't pre-rolls didn't exist back in the day either. Those have only come into market over the past 10 years, and vape pens, same thing. So there's a lot of new consumption methods and delivery devices, ways to consume the product nowadays. Were there people, you guys were camping, were you in an RV? Did you have a tent? What did that setup look like? And was it a big community all together? Were there people that brought their rigs and kind of had that set up? How community focused was it? Did you just talk to anybody and everybody? Is that kind of how it goes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty big introvert, so it was really fun for me to expand beyond that. I went with a couple budtenders, and then we met up with some other people that work in the industry as well. So we definitely came prepared. We had more than we needed, and we could definitely help some other people out that didn't have as much with them. Um, and that's fun, right? It's fun to share what you have and get something in return. Got some burgers and that kind of stuff, right? Where I'm hungry and they want some smoke, so that's a great
Mm-hmm.
trade-off, right? So something for me that I don't really care about, right? Like weed is something that people are just handing me for free every day
Yeah.
as a bud
Yeah.
tender, whereas for some of these other people, it is just this exotic, crazy thing that is being handed to them, and it's as good as gold. Whereas I was so hungry, I wanted that burger more than anything. So that trade-off to me is just fascinating.
Weed for food, that works. What did you just stock up kind of on your own supplies or at your own store? It looks like, I'm just checking out Rothbury, and it looks like there's a couple of dispensaries a little bit further south of there. I wonder if people, stop at those, or if people are coming from, say, Illinois. I'm sure they stopped through New Buffalo. If they're coming from Indiana, they probably went through Niles or Buchanan. Um, is that kind of what you saw? And I loved what you said about, um, or was it mostly homegrown? But I do love what you said about people come from all over, because we can easily lose our perspective
Yes.
around, we're industry, we're deep rooted in the culture and in the industry from an operational standpoint, from a management standpoint. And it's easy to forget about what a regular non industry worker, but still part of the community. What does that experience look like? And what's fascinating to me is, you said people come from all over. Were there a lot of international people? I know when I've gone to Movement, or what used to be Demph, a lot of Europeans come here for that festival. And maybe that's because it's, all the techno and EDM from all around, and we bring a lot of talent here. But what did that talent lineup look like? How did was it mostly out of state people or mostly in state? And did they stop at this licensed regulated dispensaries, or was it mostly products that came from the traditional market that you were noticing?
I think vast majority was rec that I was familiar with. I saw over and over familiar brands that I know, and it just comes down to ease of access, right? It's like you were saying, people are making that trek up the west side of Michigan, and I'm a bud tender in the west side. So the 2, 3 days before I headed out, it was so clear to see the influx of festival folks, right? They stand out in their bright
Yeah.
colors, and you just know, and they'll happily tell you. Like they're very friendly people. It's like, oh, it's your first time here. How did you find about how did you find out about the store? And they're just in like their full garb, and they're like, oh, actually, I'm going to Electric Forest, and it's like I kind of
Mhm.
figured that. um, so yeah, just fascinating to see that flex up. To your point, some people came out of state and brought their own stuff, but to me, what stood out is I knew the brands that I could see. I could see people puffing the Muha vapes, that kind of stuff. Um, just going to a previous point of what you were saying as far as like what I brought with me, I was just in a tiny little camp, little tent by myself with a couple other people that had their own setups as well. So I had to think about what I could bring for myself and then maybe think about what could be brought for other people too. So I think it's interesting as far as like some people, they came in with big bulk pre-roll packages for themselves, whereas me, I had a lot of singles that I can then hand out to other people. Um, so everyone kind of has their own flavor, I guess is the end of the game there.
So was most of that either traded out of love and here you go because I'm gonna bless you, or hey, you got some hamburgers, you need some weed, or was there any exchange of currency, or is it kind of a mix of all that?
Well, so my one of my best trades was a Jeter vape, and I just not a big vape person myself. So the stuff that I gave away for free were things that just didn't really connect with me, and traded that vape for a massage. It was an absolute amazing massage, and he wanted cash originally, but I didn't have cash. So we just do what we can. And after it, it was such a good massage. I went back up and I gave him 2 more pre-rolls. So I was like, man, you just changed me.
What
So
what is that? I mean, how do we bring that to the everyday economy? Because I love that barter. Like, hey, if I've got access, I want to go trade that for some, a hamburger
exactly.
or a massage on some fill up my gas tank,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever, on a day-to-day basis. I mean, is the economy going to get there? Because, there's inflation, there's rates, there's obviously cryptos and those kinds of additional digital encrypted transaction markets. But is this old school barter economy? Is there a possibility that it's going to work its way back into normal everyday civilian life?
So what stood out to me about Electric Forest and inside the venue is how little cash there was. It's
Uh,
all digital. So every single vendor, you have to put down your card or your phone and tap it, right? So because of that, it makes it easier to barter. People have less money on hand. They only have things. Or they could Venmo, I guess you could Venmo each other, right? But it kind of makes it easier for you to do things rather than money.
Yeah, you got to almost, it's the meeting of the right market, right? So, and there's, what do you place the value on it? Because there might be a Jeter, what is it, a liquid trikes all in
Yep,
one, or which? Yeah. So, and what are those retail for? Probably like
like 30
40 or something.
bucks.
Okay, $30, and that's for a full gram.
Yep.
Yeah, so they're $30 retail price, but you might have excess supply of them, right?
Yep.
And so are you trading? I mean, a $30 massage, that's a pretty good trade, but you might even be in the position to say, you know what? I've got these products because I have access to them. It's not something I'm going to personally consume, but you want a Jeter vape for that hamburger, even though they might only be needing a pre-roll. I mean, or where do they see that consumer versus producer surplus, and where's that intersection just from an economic standpoint?
It was just fascinating to be in it. Another one that really stood out to me is I was just feeling dirty. I was just feeling gross. And
You traded some weed for a shower.
a lighter for hand sanitizer. It was the best trade ever. The dude was just like, anyone have a lighter? And hey man, here, free hand sanitizer. And it's just I was so thankful for it, and he was feeling the exact same way. And the more that we can create interactions like that in the cannabis industry, that's what it's all about, right? Feeling that super win and that super win.
Oh my God, I love that you said that, because sometimes I feel like some of the experiential aspect is lost in the retail environments where it's all focused on price and THC and discounts. But in the long run, how are we going to, who's going to be the winners? Is it the ones that provide an experience that, I come from traditional retail world, and for my time at Shinola, I remember you want to appeal to all their sensory elements because you're providing them an experience, a shopping experience that they're going to remember if they ever smell that same scent, or however they may have, from whatever sensory touch point you were able to impact. That's a little bit of a longer lasting impression, and it's an experience and a memory versus just a transaction. I know that the economy is always going to be tough, and in some markets, it is more transactional. But I think that as we move forward, some of those experiential elements, do you think the consumer is willing to see value, or is able to see value in that, and maybe the relationships they've established with a bud tender? Or is it simply, I'm just going to the cheapest place for the highest THC? And I know that's a lot of where we are in many markets, but how do you see that evolving?
Well, so one of the vendors that I went into, I saw he had a Puffco, and I was just, hey man, what are you smoking? And he's like, I don't know. It was 25 bucks for 4 grams, right? Or 25 bucks for 5 grams. Like, he doesn't have any connection with the value, with the brand. All he cares about from a value perspective is the cost. So that can be tough, right? Like, in a market like Michigan that is so competitive, that is so hyper focused on trying to beat the other guy, to your point, like that's why it's just a race to the bottom. But it's all about making those connections, and there are those brands that are not racing to the bottom. They're establishing, saying, no, we know that we are worth something, and we are going to keep that worth.
Yeah, and what is a huge opportunity from that conversation is, and I don't know how this differs from individual to individual, but everybody's ECS, endocannabinoid system, is different. And for me, I don't look at THC. I'm more of a flavor and quality,
Definitely.
but I get a lot of feels and vibes from just being around the product, even smelling raw, raw cured flower. Fresh flower is the best smell. If you go into a grow room on, say, week
Yes.
7, 8, 9, or first chop, when it gets chopped down, that's the best smell in the world. I like that a lot better than, opening up a pack, or the smell of, smoked weed. I love all those smells, but my favorite one is that fresh smell. And when we're talking about somebody who just wants 4 grams of they have no idea what, like sauce or, some sort of cured resin, most likely. I don't think that's probably live, and it's definitely not solventless for that price. And whatever brand it is, they're hitting his THC requirements and his pocket requirements. But at what point do people, if ever, start to evolve to higher tier, or is that just individuals in their own psychology, whether it's their ECS or just their way of life? Is that just a trained and learned behavior, or is that, what does that look like over time for certain people?
I think it really just comes down to education, and that's what the value of the bud tender is showing to these people that, me as a more experienced person, hey man, I've been doing this for 10 years. You don't want to be smoking that every single day, or eating switch it up, try something new, or do something different. And being that voice and that advisor, I think is really important, and that's part of the experience, right? So when people come in, they often know all the names of the bud tenders. They have their favorite one that they like to talk to. They like to catch up on their week, that kind of stuff. It becomes that full circle experience where it's a friend giving recommendations, not a salesman trying to sell you something.
Yeah, when you're a bud tender, do you feel like sometimes you're a dual role therapist?
Absolutely. And I want to be careful too, where I can't tell you what's right and wrong as a therapist sometimes, right? Like it's your experience, it's your life. So to your point, maybe some people, I mean, I don't smoke cigarettes, right? Some people smoke cigarettes. Some
Right.
people drink alcohol. Some people do all sorts of different
Sure.
stuff. Um, I I'm okay with that. I'm okay with how you want to live your life, but me, I'll try and help you have a little bit of a better time. So I'm going to give you education on everything that I can, and it's just really up to you. And some people don't really value that. Some people just want to get high, or they just want what's cheap, and that's okay, right? Like we live in America where there's Cheetos and Doritos plentiful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's just how it is.
I get high off of the dopamine and serotonin release of even talking about weed. Um, and
That's why
or
we're here,
having,
right?
yeah. I'm high as hell right now, man. No, completely clear right now. But I think that everybody's kind of got their own, like you said, vices or whatever. But to me, some of the best vices is that interpersonal interaction, even as sometimes an introvert, when you're able to get into a comfortable place and have that conversation, how good does that feel? And that's because cannabis or weed was able to facilitate some of those interactions. Would you agree with that? There's more than just, hey, I'm gonna dab some 85% live resin or smoke a infused 50% joint. I mean, what's the experiential aspect of a given quote high, based on not just the product consumed, but the set and the setting and the community that surrounds you?
So that's what I love so much about Forest is all those different sets and opportunities and experiences that you can have. It's literally endless. And it's up to you as the user to decide how you want to experience it. So maybe you just sit in camp for a couple hours and relax with some friends. Maybe you're going to a show. Maybe you're just eating some food. Maybe you're in the forest, just in your hammock, right? There is so many opportunities for you to decide how you want to experience it. And for me, that's what cannabis is all about, right? We have pre-rolls, edibles, drinks, more and more opportunities for the user to decide how they are going to consume that product.
Did people have a lot of beverage there? Did they bring it in cooler, or was beverage kind of takes up too much space and takes too much work to keep it cool, or pouring them on ice?
Yeah.
What did the vendor trucks look like? There was just food vendors and merch vendors, and then and just the other question I just asked is around beverages specifically. I don't know if you can dive into those a little bit.
So inside the actual festival venue, you couldn't bring any liquids. You had to
Mm.
pour everything out, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like it wasn't, they had some signs, but it blew me away how many people get to the entrance and then they just pour out their drink right at the entrance and then throw away their can in the trash. Um, Got to have recycling in the future in that area, by the way.
Mm.
Um, I did see some drinks outside of the festival, higher potency drinks. That's the thing that stood out to me is because, like you're saying, it's about weight and what you can carry. And in that environment, you don't want a 5 milligram drink. You want to have the 100 milligram drink because it's like 20 of the other drinks, right? So, did see some of those keef and pleasantries, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Forgot about your other question now.
Yeah, I was just wondering about beverage, and then
Oh, vendors.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. What
So,
kind of trucks did they have, or how was that set up? Were they tables? Were they trucks? Were they there the whole time? Did they shut down at certain
yeah.
hours? That
So,
kind of thing.
so it fascinated me as far as the the ramp down. The first 2 days, that's when the vendors went really crazy. And everyone, like in my camp, there were people coming through the camp constantly trying to sell different trinkets and all sorts of different
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? So people want to get that. They know that you have more money to spend at the start rather than at the end. That's when everyone's all hyped up and ready to go.
Yeah.
So that's just in general, the vibe is it starts with the heavy push. And as far as like vendors and food trucks and that kind of stuff goes, there was two general groups. There was like the outside along the festival. So as you're walking up to the festival, it's a whole line of vendors. And then once you get inside the venue, it's kind of similar. There's a mix of food and products, both inside and outside the venue. Thought it was interesting that it was pretty similar prices, which I guess makes sense, right? But in terms of busyness, people want food inside the venue and people want to buy things outside of the venue because you have to walk them back to your camp, right? If you have all these things that you're buying inside the festival and you have to walk them a farther distance, that's just a little bit tougher. So outside the venue, things like trinkets, clothes, just like general supplies, that kind of stuff. Inside the venue, it's a little bit more specialized a lot of time. One venue that, or one vendor that really stood out to me was Moodmats. So Moodmats makes it just a nice thing for you to sit on, which makes sense, right? You get inside the festival, and then that's your opportunity to go, hey, I didn't bring anything to sit on. I need something. Well, what do you know? You walk by the Moodmats vendor. And not only do you walk by it, they do a really good job with their advertising. So it's like a yellow brick road where they had a whole row of mats going down
Mm-hmm.
to their vendor location. So it just really stands out more than any of the other vendors that just had their own booth. They had like an extended booth because of that. And as far as the actual displays, I really liked the way that they marketed themselves. They had a like different tier of prices where they would have one that was like 30% off. It was a demo mat that had been used before.
Mm-hmm.
Sell those cheaper, get them out of there. Had like a higher quality mat for those that are looking for that top tier thing. But it just really stood out to me that these guys know what they're doing and understand the game.
Is that a mood mat? Just for us that don't know as well, is it like a? I know you said it's something you can sit on. Is it like a yoga mat style
Yeah. So it's
size?
kind of like a thicker mat that is like mesh and just is durable and comfortable.
And how big is it? Is it just enough for you to sit on, or can you lay on it?
Yeah, they're pretty big. So that's the thing as well. I think it makes sense to have the vendor inside because then you get it and then you have to walk it back after.
Mm-hmm.
You use it and then you're like, oh, it's kind of heavy, it's kind of big. Oh, well, I got to bring it back now. Um, Kind of the opposite of the vendors outside where like you're bringing vendor stuff outside right back to your camp. In this circumstance, you're using it and then bringing it back.
So is this set up that when you say outside, is that the camping area, and then inside is where the music happens? Is that what you're describing? And if so, how far of a walk is it between these things?
So I averaged over half a marathon of walking per day. I walked a lot. I can track it, so I know it. Um, you're right. So there's like the general admission camping area, and then right before you get into the festival, there's like the outer festival area where there's tents and venues and some different things that you can be doing, medical tents, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the gate where there's the security that checks you, and then you get into the festival.
And you guys, is there electricity? Do you have your phones, or does it kind of like shut off everything? What about running water?
So I was very impressed with the water operation. It was hot. It was over 90 degrees, or like 90 degrees with heat index
Oh,
like
yeah, you
100
went on a
degrees.
hot weekend. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, it was cooking. So they did a really good job with access to water. It was cold, it was fresh, easy to get. Electricity, not so much. That was something that you had to come prepared with. There were like mobile charging stations that were
Hmm.
like 20 bucks. Definitely was something that you would pay for if you didn't come prepared. But for me, I just brought two, three, little battery packs that I could charge
Hmm.
my phone with when I'm running low.
How far is the car from the campsite? How
So
far do
you
you
can,
park?
yeah, so you can park right at your campsite. So
Oh,
you,
wow.
you, it's everyone just pulls up to their campsite, you park right there, and then that's your campsite. So some people just sleep in their cars, which to me was
Yeah.
interesting, seeing all the individual
A little hot.
elements. What? Yes, yeah. But some guys they have their RVs, like you said, or they're
Hmm.
different
Hmm.
campers. I think there was a different area for like big RVs. There was like small little like school buses, that kind of stuff that people had modified. I saw a couple of those. But yeah, it's hot. It's one of those things you are out partying till 5 in the morning, and by 10 o'clock you are back up because the sun is back up. So fun time, tiring time, but yeah, the elements were not super kind. Rained the first couple days, so everyone put up their structures to keep off the rain, and then right after that heavy winds came in, so everyone's structures got messed up, so many tents got destroyed. We definitely had a weekend where everything was thrown at us.
Yeah, y'all had some rainforest weather with that heat, the wind and then the rain.
Yeah.
What what would you say the demographics was? Was it just, was it mostly 20 to 30 somethings, or did you have, people my age there? How was it?
Yeah, I think like 25 to 50 is the general kind of range. Shout out to some of the senior citizens that I saw there.
Hell
I
yeah.
think it's really cool. Saw one guy, he was just walking with his cane, just step by step by step. And I just give a lot of props to all these different kinds of people that attended the festival. But to your point, generally more of a wider audience, like EDM crew, I think often is like that 18 to 29 wider population. Um, Trying to think of other like demographics that stood out
Men
at me.
versus women, probably even
Pretty
split.
comparable, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. And then what would you say as far as Michigan residents versus out of state? And if they're Michigan, are they coming from mostly the West Coast, or people from over here in Detroit, you know, track and make it over there?
Yeah,
Or UP? I don't know.
I definitely would say that the Michigan people stood out to me because they're just so comfortable, right? Like they don't have to travel as far. They have maybe a little bit better setups. But at the same time, some of these guys are traveling 15 hours and they just go from festival to festival. Lots
Oh
of
yeah.
people I know came straight from Bonnaroo. So, um, a variety,
Yeah, a full mix.
full mix.
Yeah, that's good. Um, what was security like at the festival? Was it pretty chill, or did you feel comfortable and safe? Was there a need for them? What does that look like there?
Well, with how the world climate is right now, I did hear some people that were just concerned, right? They were like, I don't feel comfortable being in crowds right now when you talk
Hmm.
about some of the scariness happening in the world. And I just want to give my deepest gratitude and thanks to everyone that helped out on the security side because it just felt amazing. I never felt unsafe. You often hear of women feeling like that they can't be alone at big places like this because they could be taken advantage of or something like that. That just wasn't the case. Like anyone that ever saw that seemed to be in kind of trouble, within seconds there was someone that was helping them out, either like a security staff or a medical staff. I was just so impressed overall with how it felt. When you are entering the venue, you have to go through security, through a metal detector, and they take your bags, look through all your bags. And it's a big operation. Like it's a huge task to keep people safe when people are maybe
Yeah.
not in 100% right state of mind. And just very impressed with the police in general.
Hmm.
A lot of times I feel like with like a alternative culture, or people that may be using illicit substances or something like that, they're afraid of police, right? They
Yeah.
they don't want to get in trouble. They're paranoid. They're concerned. And I was just super impressed that the vibe that those police officers gave out. They were giving fist bumps sometimes. You
Yeah.
could give them candy. They had their little sprouts sometimes on their hats. It just really connected with the community. And for those that maybe had bad experiences in the past, they could realize, oh, this isn't always going to be the case. It was, there's good out there.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in the 80s and 90s, that's definitely, there was a whole F the police
Exactly.
mindset, and that's not for no reason.
Yeah.
We've all been persecuted a lot for being in this industry, and that's changed a lot, and I'm so grateful and thankful for that. But there's still some of that stigma that's still there. But it sounds like these security or police officers were really there to protect and serve and make sure that it's a safe place and a comfortable environment. So I love to hear that. I've noticed a similar thing at any events that I've attended recently, which is so you were able to bring in whatever bags you want. They check it, but if you had like a pound of weed in there, you're still good to go. But was there no alcohol on site allowed? And did they sell alcohol at all?
They sold a lot of alcohol, that's for
Okay.
sure. So that you
Okay.
could get your 21 wristband, and then you could get your alcohol inside. I saw White Claw was giving away free samples, so that was interesting to me. Definitely a big alcohol culture whenever you're going to go to these festivals. And it's just incredible what they can charge, right? They're charging
Yeah.
$15 a
Yeah.
beer.
I mean, how
$15 a
much how much
beer.
for a bottle of water or a Diet Coke? Those is probably $8.
$6 for a Coke, $2 for a
Yeah.
water.
Yeah, yeah. Well, 2 for a water is not awful. I mean, it's still more than the cost of
You're right.
making
Yeah,
it,
shout
but
out to Island Noodles. That was the vendor that I went to for food every single time, and I was blown away by the operation that they had put together. Each time when I'd walk by all of the different food places, guess who's the busiest? It was always Island Noodles. And guess who was churning people out the fastest? Island Noodles. Those guys were raking it in, and they deserved it. They were working in hot conditions over these big vats of oil, just working and working
mm,
and working. What stood out to me with that vendor is the limited amount of options that they had. Like you
mhm,
said, they had Coke and
mhm.
water, but they only had a vegan noodle option and a chicken option, which was like $2 more. So I think that really makes it easy for them to continually churn out the same thing over and over. They just have to make the same thing over and over. It's consistent. They know what kind of products or inventory they need to stock. It just makes so much sense, and I was just very, very impressed with what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is, ideal from an operational flow to not have quote that many SKUs or customer options. And it still
Yes.
sounded like you had a good experience there as well. Was that because of the service, or how did their booth look? Because I know you talked about the Moodmats. That was definitely the experience
Yeah.
resonated with you as much as the product need. Was the island noodles was a cool experience, or was it just great service and a fast line? How did that look for you?
So I have some chronic stomach issues. That's really what got me into cannabis to begin with, is my stomach just betrays me. So I
Mm,
have to be really careful with not eating things that are too greasy, or I'm a big rice person. And the island noodle food, you could just tell it was fresh. You could see them
mhm.
bringing it out of the freezer and fridge, where they're chopping up their what was it, like cabbage or something.
Yeah.
They had a whole bunch of things that were pre-cut, so they would just rip open the bag and everything was put in the vat. So over and over, they just high quality and fast. I knew that when I got in line, I wasn't going to be waiting a long time, even if it was a long line. And the people were so friendly. They were so nice, even though they were stressed. Sorry, just gonna take me 1 second.
Sure.
And they're just running around going crazy and doing so much stuff. And um, 10 out of 10, I don't have a bad thing to say about them.
That's those festival vibes, man. When you go to those festivals, a lot of the vendors, a lot of the attendees are, there's an expectation that has been set that you're already aware of. I'm going to wait in lines. I'm going to be in a crowd,
Yep.
and I'm going to be patient because I want my inner peace. And I think that's a lot of people's mindsets when they go to these things versus if you go to a sporting event and it's a little bit more
You're right.
aggressive sometimes with the lines or the airport or
That's a
a
good point.
bar where it's a little bit more aggressive and serve me first and I'm in a rush or that kind of thing. But when you're in a captive audience that's there, they don't have somewhere they need to be because they didn't plan their schedule appropriately for their day, and they're sitting in line at a fast food joint and they're honking at the person in front of them. It's like, you should plan your life out better if that's how
Yeah,
you're
that's a
being.
good point.
So, I mean, it's kind of a nice little reservation of a timeout from that rat race of a life that the daily grind of being in traffic and all those things. So,
Last thing,
yeah,
last thing with
yeah.
the island noodles that stuck out with me is the actual branding of the noodles. Like you would know that someone else had that product because of the noodles, right? Whereas like a hamburger or all these other things, it just doesn't stand out in that same way. So they just really were that step above in terms of operations and branding.
So, was it in a branded bowl or
Yeah,
is
just
just?
like a Chinese like takeout little
Mm-hmm.
thing, like a little Chinese takeout thing that was
Yeah,
branded.
the white little cardboard.
Yeah, basically, yep.
Yep, yep, yep. Um, like we I'm wondering, just hot question for you.
Yeah.
Who's the best, artist or performer that you saw? Who were your top couple?
Hey, so the reason that I went was for my friend Scoochie Bucci. So he performed on Friday and Saturday, and then we got to hang out after that. And his performances really stood out to me in terms of just the community feel, where it was people that have been following him for the past couple of years, watched his growth, where previously he only had 5, 10 people in the audience sometimes. And now, he's got a packed room at the chapel in Electric Forest, and he has people that will dress up in different costumes and come on stage for him and stuff like that. So just like the experience of seeing that was amazing for me, and just watching that transformation of zero to hero, right? It's really beautiful. Beyond that, I just went through so many different venues that it was tough for me to keep track of the names sometimes.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
ability to just move from one experience to the next within minutes to me is the magic of the forest. It was loud, it was chaotic sometimes, but it was just so beautiful seeing all these different performers together.
That's really cool. Where did the performers stay? Were most of them there as festival goers too, or did they normally come in for their set and then leave? It sounds like Scoochie Boochie was there as part of the community and was there the whole time, which is super cool. What
Yeah.
about any of the other artists? Do you know?
I don't necessarily know. I know that they had a staff area, right? So for the staff area, it allows them to have access to the venue a little bit quicker in a nice area compared to the general admission or some of the other camps. So they definitely take care of their staff, and I think that's great. From everything I heard, Electric Forest did a good job providing for those that were providing for the forest, right? It's a trade-off. So as long as you take care of others, they'll take care of you. And it really just felt like that was the case throughout the forest.
That's incredible. I'm just checking out the lineup right now, and it looks like, wow, you saw Zed's Dead was
Yeah,
there.
Zed Zez was sick. That was a really good one.
Mike Posner, that's pretty cool. Who else was there? There's a lot of artists on Jero. That's dope. Wow, I mean, this is quite the lineup. If that looks like a Fisher. So pretty dope. Festival that you saw. What I mean, what did you take away from the festival as far as trinkets? Or I know you got the Moodmat and you ate a lot of noodles. Was there any, did you get any kind of dream catchers or stones or crystals or
Yeah, so I got
any
about a
sort of
bunch of
jewelry, anything like
rocks,
that?
bunch of jewelry, some necklaces. I'm just not a big person for that kind of stuff. Like I never wear jewelry in my normal
Yeah,
life. So that was
yeah.
kind of fun. It was a nice switch up where I have all these little things that I can look back at, and maybe I'll continue to wear, some of the bracelets that I got. Maybe I won't, but they're just something to look back at. And in general, it was always me trading something else that I didn't really think was the best and other people liked, and I got something that I liked out of it, and I just think that's really cool.
Hey, another one man's trash, another man's treasure, and
Exactly.
it's nice to be able to have something that's not that important or valuable to you and make somebody else's day and with a nice trade there. What I guess you know what is that? I know you said Wild had some representation there. Were they able to sell their CBD product line, or was it just kind of brand ambassadors? And what does that look like from an opportunity for some of these festivals that aren't licensed consumption events where you're able to sell product there? What does that kind of intersection look like from a brand opportunity standpoint for some of the licensed and operators and brands that are out there in the market? Did that seem to be impactful? Were they giving out swag, and should other brands look at this as an opportunity to provide and activate some sort of experience for a potential customer that's not transacting right then and there, but maybe they will on their way home or next week or next month?
Yeah, so it wasn't like an official representation, but as we know, shout out to Headset, we know that Wild is one of the biggest in the country, right? They
Yeah,
do a lot of sales.
yeah,
So they are everywhere. And it just stood out to me that, of course, they'd be at the forest. They had one of their reps that was walking around talking to people, had a shirt on, gave away a couple other Wild shirts. Just you just knew who he was right away. Very big Wild logo, right? Like it just stands out. Had a good presence about him, just talked
I,
about the brand, that kind of stuff.
I love what Wild does. They've got beautiful packaging and charge a premium price for their products and have a consumer that they've captured, and that's a loyal consumer for them because they have to pay a higher price there. But the cool thing is, as bougie as the packaging is, the people from Wild are so real and so from the about the community, about the culture, and just everything they stand for. When you can combine some premium products with premium packaging, premium sales support and marketing, and the people are awesome people. I think that's really the winning formula at the end of the day. What would you say? Would you agree with that, or any other perspectives there?
The thing that stood out to me about it just hit me as you were talking about the packaging. Normally you think of like the hexagon or whatever
Yeah.
the packaging for Wild. Well, they also have Good Tide, right?
Yep.
And so Good Tide, that's like this nice cylindrical
Cylindrical with the button. Yeah.
thinner,
Yeah.
and that is perfect for festivals. I saw a lot of women that would just have that tucked in their waistband.
Yeah.
And the great thing about the Good Tide is how it's pectin based, I believe, right? So they don't melt. So on those hot days with some of these other gummies that are melting all together, you have an easy way to store a high quality gummy that you know is not going to go bad, which to me is just like, boom, these guys get it, they understand it, and they're crushing it.
We'll get into a whole gummy segment at some point because I'm
Yes,
a fan of the pectin versus the gelatin. Having vegan tendencies and not eating pork,
got it.
it's a choice that I prefer to eat a pectin gummy if I can. But there's a lot of people that feel the exact opposite way. So that'll be a good conversation for another show that we can do a deep dive on the gummy category and edibles in general. So before we wrap, best memory that you had from the festival, was that the Moodmats? Was that the trading of the vape for the massage? Was that show you saw with
Nothing
Scoochie
above.
Boochie? None of
So,
the above.
um, it's so hard to say best. One that really stood out to me and stuck with me forever was doing yoga in the mornings.
Oh,
The
amazing.
interactive yoga
Yes.
of meeting other people and not only refreshing and restoring my body after the day before, but community, having that community feel and meeting others and just feeling refreshed each day was something that I'll take away forever and just stuck with me.
Well, have that stick with you in your everyday. Do that yoga every morning and get into some hot yoga. It's even a whole. I mean, I guess you did do hot yoga. You're out there in the 90-degree weather,
cooking, man.
so you
It
know
was
all about
cooking.
it. Yeah, try turn that up to 110. See what that's like. It's amazing. Very cathartic to get into that hot yoga. Well, you know that's another nice intersection is the health and wellness sector that we have
Yes.
with cannabis, and we can get into that another time.
We could
Well,
talk
Michael,
forever.
yeah. Oh, we could talk forever. That's why we got to hit hard stops on here so we wrap up. I got to jump, but man, it's been real. What was our sign off? Anything before we do our sign off? Any last thoughts? Or are you ready to sign off?
We're good.
We good. We out.
All right.
Weeds to the clouds. Appreciate you, Michael Peterson.
Yes, thank you. Till next time.
I'll see. Yes, sir. Deuces.
Boom.
Bye.